Hello, and welcome to MMOScholar's 25-man Heroic Ragnaros guide. This guide assumes you already know the normal mode of the encounter, so I'll only cover the hard mode mechanics in this fight. In Phase 1, magma traps now place a 45-second debuff on all players when blown up. This debuff causes any further explosions to do 50% more damage to the raid, guaranteeing a wipe. This means that during Phase 1, you'll typically have 2 magma traps still up going into the transition, and players will need to take extra care to make sure they're not knocked into magma traps by Wrath of Ragnaros during the phase. Lava walls continue as normal in this phase, as well as melee knockbacks. The transition phases differ from normal in that the spawn points of Sons of Flame are not set. He will still hammer in one of the 3 set locations, but the suns can spawn anywhere on either side of the hammer. Most times you'll see decently even splits, but others you'll find 8 on one side or 6 right next to the hammer. Having assigned stuns and knockbacks plays an extremely key role in this phase of the encounter. The damage in this phase is also far from inconsequential. In Phase 2, there are 2 new mechanics. When molten elementals are within 6 yards of each other, they gain the Molten Power buff, which increases their damage by 25% per elemental in range, as well as making them unsnarable, rootable, or stunnable. This means that if you used a traditional method of stacking and tanking them, each add would be meleeing for about 1,000,000 damage. To counter this mechanic, we make a tight stack towards the middle of the room. As seeds are spawning, we stampeding roar and move as a group towards the side, avoiding the initial seed damage, but making sure the molten elementals are tightly clumped for our AoE. Boomkins, frost DKs, and hunters are extremely good for this phase of the fight, but every person who can contribute to AoE without being meleeed should contribute. If your raid comp is lacking in AoE DPS, you can send players with melee range AoEs a bit further out from the camp and let them run back into melee to AoE with abilities such as Hellfire or Arcane Explosion, then just cleaving their adds down after the initial set is down. We utilize Rallying Cry, Aura Mastery, and Power Word Barrier to handle the seed explosion damage. Shortly after each set of molten seeds, Rag will cast World in Flames. The World in Flames mechanic is similar to the normal mechanic Engulfing Flames, except he casts it 3 or 4 times in succession. World in Flames cannot target the same area of the room twice in a row, so moving into an area that was just previously engulfed will always be safe. Lava waves will continue as normal right after the dancing. Once the boss hits 40%, you want to really push damage before he submerges to help make the Phase 3 DPS check when he reemerges. In the second transition, you're confronted with 2 lava scions. We handle adds as usual, except leaving 1 marked add up as long as possible, usually the one furthest from the hammer. This allows us to maximize lava scion damage so that we have less spread damage to do and can effectively meet the ridiculous Phase 3 DPS check. Combat rogues are ideal for taking out lava scions quickly and easily, especially since they can continue to blade flurry off of them and finish them off once Phase 3 begins. Phase 3 is an all-out DPS burn. Your goal is to make it to Phase 4 with only 2 meteors alive, which requires quite an extensive amount of DPS. Minimizing movement for your raid is key here, and bringing execute classes such as warriors and warlocks helps exceptionally. We split the raid on the opposite sides of the room and have healing priests on either side knocking meteors back into the lava. The goal with each meteor is to make sure your DPS don't have to move or waste their own DPS on them. Once knocked back, ideally they target a raid member on the opposite side of where the meteor was just knocked back. This gives ample time with the meteor running through the lava with no one's DPS being disturbed. On top of the meteors in this phase, World in Flames will continue to be cast in relatively quick intervals. Once the boss reaches 10%, he will submerge. The meteors will be frozen by your 3 new druid friends, and the final phase of the encounter begins. Phase 4 is where the heroic encounter really just begins. There are a very large number of mechanics at work in Phase 4, all of which are extremely important to know inside and out. At the beginning of the phase, your 2 meters will still be active from the last phase, fixating players as usual. We knock back the meteors non-stop as soon as possible for the first set. The two biggest mechanics early on in this phase are Magma Geyser and Breath of Frost. If at any point more than 9 players are within 6 yards of each other, a Magma Geyser will spout from the ground. This is especially important when Breath of Frost spawns are out. Shortly after the phase begins, a Breath of Frost will spawn in a random place in the room. Breath of Frost effects make you immune to superheated stacks and damage if you're standing in it. We stack on 3 marks in a triangle inside of the Breath of Frost. It's important that when you run into or out of your mark area, you do not run through or near any other groups, as it will cause a geyser to spawn and destroy your frost patch. We then move to our second Breath of Frost and repeat what we just did. When needed, fixated players must kite the meteors away from the group until they can be knocked back safely, or you're going to kill the second one with your second frost patch. During this phase, Ragnaros will periodically cast Empowered Sulfuras. When this ability is used, your tanks must kite Ragnaros into an entangling root trap. This root lasts 10 seconds and is enough time for the effect to wear off of Ragnaros. If your tank is meleeed while this ability is active, it is an instant raid wipe. The final mechanic is the one that ends up being the most important, Dread Flame. 5 seconds after your first breath spawns, one of your druid companions will spawn a Cloudburst. Cloudburst allows 3 players to be immune to superheated and Dread Flame damage, as well as allowing them to clear Dread Flame by walking over it to extinguish it. Once Dread Flame is on the ground, it will multiply itself every few seconds. If it's not taken care of extremely quickly, it can grow to be unmanageable. As the fight continues, Dread Flame spawns speed up to the point where it's impossible to clear all the fire on the ground. At this point, your Cloudburst Soakers should move in towards the raid and focus more on protecting the raid from incoming fire rather than attempting to clear everything out there. Once both meteors are dead, the fight becomes a straight DPS check and a race against the Dread Flame Soft and Rage. Once the boss reaches 15%, you ideally want to move to the newest frost patch and have your Cloudburst Soakers stack 1 on each mark. This allows you to not have to move for Dread Flame in the camps, as it will overrun you if you continue to attempt to soak it. With your entire raid DPSing at this point, you should be able to burn the boss before the frost patch despawns. However, raid cooldowns can be changed for a bit after the patch has despawned if absolutely necessary. Thanks for watching. Please be sure to like this video, subscribe to the MMOScholar YouTube channel for future videos, and to check out our site at MMOScholar.com. Good luck on your Firelands progression.
Go Dees, go Dees, go Dees, go Dees.
Trance if you have them.
Taunt.
Fade.
Come on to the end. Come on.
Burns in 1 second, guys. Just
Nerf Druid!
Can you taunt it or something?
Mirror images, mirror images.
Get him over the trap.
Images.
In the trap! In the
Get him in the trap! Get him in
You
the
got it?
trap! Get him in the trap!
Go! Get him!
Go,
Get him!
go,
Get him!
Zin,
Oh my god.
Get him!
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
No! This was to be my hour of triumph!
Oh my god!
I love you at the end.
MVP!
That's a
I
bit.
love it. MVP!